Here we are picking up with number 8. I'm a seafood toxin. I occur in certain fish that eat smaller fish that have consumed the toxin. You can find me in barracuda, snapper, grouper, and amberjack. Okay, number 8 is Shigera toxin. What happens with Shigera toxin is the little fish have the toxin, and then the medium fish eat the little fish, and then the big fish eat the medium fish, and it goes on and on and on. Also, if you're not familiar with any of these fishes, barracuda, snapper, grouper, or amberjack, you need to Google them to see their size. Amberjack fish, they're all saltwater fish, but amberjack fish are usually the largest in this group. And if you've never seen one, you might want to see what it looks like to see how large it is. It's a white fish. Some people eat it, some people don't. It's mild. Okay, so what do you think? What is the onset time for an illness from a biological toxin? Within a few minutes, within a few hours, 6 to 12 hours, or 24 hours? If you said A, within a few minutes, you are correct. Biological toxin, especially from a fish, can start within 5 minutes. Okay, so what symptoms are associated with the biological toxin? Vomiting and diarrhea. Neurological symptoms, flushing, hives and difficulty breathing, heart palpitations. Neurological symptoms would be like it's really hot outside but your body is very cold, or it's very cold outside but you're actually like really hot. If you said all of them, then you are correct. All of these symptoms are associated with biological toxin. All right, chemical contaminants. So chemical contaminants, like in the photo, are where chemicals are sprayed around food that could potentially contaminate the food. So we want to avoid spraying down a buffet line like you see in the photo. You would have a rag that would have a sanitizer solution that you would wipe down. But we do not want chemicals in our food, especially bleach, sanitizer, that sort of stuff. So to prevent this from happening, we want to make sure that we follow the manufacturer's labels. We want to make sure that the labels are original to the chemical containers and that they are reusable. We want to make sure that directions are followed by our local regulatory authority. And especially when you're throwing out your chemicals, you want to make sure that that's required too. Chemicals should be used for their intended use. So we use Windex for windows. We don't use Windex to clean food contact surfaces. And make sure, excuse me, we separate chemicals from food and food contact surfaces by spacing and partitioning. Chemicals should also be stored on the bottom shelf if they're stored with food. They should be stored away from food and utensils and equipment used to create food. So physical contaminants. So you can be pits, natural objects found in your food, as in this photo here. That could be a physical contaminant. It can be metal shavings, can be Band-Aids, can be hair. It can be any of those things. Anything that you can physically find in your food is considered a physical contaminant. So some symptoms could be cuts, dental damage. Imagine if you bit on that pit from a cherry. That wouldn't end too well. Choking, bleeding, and pain. A lot of times in fish, if you don't get out the pin bones, especially in a salmon, then that could be very problematic. So to prevent this type of contamination, we want to purchase food from approved, reputable suppliers. Our food should be inspected upon receipt, and we want to practice poor personal hygiene. I tell you, if you ever find a hair, a Band-Aid, a fingernail, something of that nature within your food, you get disgusted quite easily. And that's not something that anybody wants to eat. So it's very important that we pay attention for physical contaminants. So deliberate contamination of food. Those are people that deliberately, they on purpose attempt to contaminate food for various reasons. They could be terrorists, they could be disgruntled employees, they could be vendors, they could be competitors. The defense tool that FDA says that we need to use is called alert. And that basically just says that we need to be mindful of what's going on in our establishment, who is in our establishment, what they are doing. Individuals should be monitored, and people who are not part of the regular kitchen staff should not be in the kitchen. So we want to assure, look, and let me back up. We want to assure. So we want to make products that are received from safe sources, so purchased from approved reputable suppliers. We want to look and monitor the products in the facility, make sure everything's safe. Employees, you need to know who's in your facilities. Reports, keep information related to the food defense accessible. Also, if there's any suspicious activity, you want to make sure that gets reported. And then any threats, you need to develop a plan for responding to suspicious activity or to the threat of the operation. Alright, so now we're going to talk about responding to a foodborne illness outbreak. So you're a manager of a restaurant, somebody calls your establishment and they say, hey, I got sick last night from eating at your food. Not only did I get sick, but my best friend that I ate dinner with, she got sick too. And we ate the same food. We both have hamburgers. They both had ketchup on them. We both had French fries, so we had the same exact food, even down to the drink, because we both had Coca-Cola. And we both have vomiting. We both have diarrhea. We both have fever. So those are the same symptoms, the same food, and they came from the same exact place. So that's your illness outbreak. So what you'd have to do is gather the information. So you want their contact information. You want to know specifically every item that they ate. Down to condiments, onions, pickles, ketchup, mayonnaise, mustard, all of that stuff is important. You want to ask for a description of the symptoms. So what kind of symptoms are you having? And then you want to know when they first got sick. And it doesn't say on here, but you, kind of want to know approximately to when they were at your establishment. And then the most important thing that you can do is you have to report it to the regulatory authority. If only one person calls you, it's your responsibility to report it. One person is questionable, but 2 people is considered an outbreak. It really depends on what you and your establishment feel and how you feel and what you think is the right thing to do. But authorities have to be notified, as in the public health department, to have them come in and see what went wrong. Alright, so lettuce has been a really popular thing right now with E. coli. And so we want to know, what do? We get a phone call that says that our lettuce has E. coli in it. Alright, this is what we do. We have to segregate the product, so we take it out of the general population of the other ingredients. We put it aside. We have to label it that says do not use, do not throw away. And we don't use it because it could potentially be contaminated, number one. And we don't throw it away because the regulatory authority is going to want to come and inspect it. And then we need to document it. You want to log the information, so how did you hear about it? When did you do it? What time did you remove it? You want product description, product date, lot number, sell by date, package size, how much you think is used, how much is left. And it might also be a good idea to find your invoice and or the packing slip that came with these products so that they can figure out where this came from and where this illness started. Staff needs to be identified, so we need to figure out who was there when the incident occurred. Staff needs to be interviewed immediately and documentation should be kept. Obviously, you need to cooperate with authorities. You need to provide appropriate documentation. And then procedures need to be reviewed. You need to make sure that your standards of your establishment that are being met, and if any standards are not working, what needs to be reevaluated. All right, we're going to talk about food allergens. Food allergens are huge. There are 8 food allergens. You're going to do a project on that, so I'm not going to tell you what they are, but you need to know that there's 8. And I'm looking forward to getting your projects. But a food allergen is an issue with an individual person that when they eat that particular food product, for example, nuts, that their body cannot break down the protein in those nuts, therefore they get allergic reaction. The proteins occur naturally. When you eat enough of them, the allergic reaction can occur. They can be, it can be mild, it can be severe. It just depends on the individual person and how it works. You need to know that there's a difference between an allergy and an intolerance. So a lot of people have a peanut allergy. So if they eat those peanuts, they could potentially die. The other one is an intolerance, which maybe could be like milk. So if you drink milk, your stomach might be upset, you might have diarrhea, and you might vomit, but you're not going to die from drinking milk because your body can't tolerate the milk. So there's a difference between an allergen and an intolerance, and you need to make sure that you know the difference between the two. So initially, when the person eats the product, the symptoms may be really mild. In severe cases, you can actually die from allergic reaction. What can happen is the person can go into what's called anaphylactic shock, and that's where the tongue swells, the lips swell, the throat swells, they can't breathe. If an emergency like this occurs in a restaurant, you have to immediately call 911. A lot of times, people know about these allergens, they don't realize they're in the food, and so then an EpiPen has to be used. If an EpiPen has to be used, you need to make sure you document the time in which the epinephrine was administered to the individual, and you always, always, always call 911, whether or not the person wants you to. If an allergic reaction occurs, you must call 911. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Especially if a EpiPen is administered, 911 must be called. Alright, so food labels with allergens. The big 8 allergens must be completely identified on labels. If you notice on this one, it's usually in bold print. This one says contains wheat. Wheat is one of your major allergens. So it has to have the common name of the food, has to have it showing in parentheses after the ingredients, and it also has to have a contained statement. So if this contained soy, peanuts, and wheat, down here in bold, it would say it. It would also say it in this ingredient section. It's imperative that we're reading and understanding labels. Service staff should help prevent allergic reactions by describing the dishes, tell the customers exactly how it's prepared. We should identify all of the ingredients in the food product, including any secret ingredients. It cannot be a secret if it can potentially kill someone, okay? We need to make sure the customer understands that, sometimes things occur and you can't always prevent it, but we do our best. And then we need to suggest items that do not contain that allergen. And they also need to clearly mark your order. As you notice on this check that this individual has written, is in big, bold print, no peanuts. To make sure we know the kitchen staff knows about the allergy. When you deliver the food, you need to make sure from the kitchen staff that this does not contain the allergen. Make sure items did not touch the plate, and the food should be delivered separately from the other food. A lot of restaurants that carry gluten-free pizza crust, they change their aprons, they prepare the crust in a different area, they use different serving utensils. All of those types of things are important when preventing allergic reactions. We can prevent cross-contact by checking recipes and ingredient labels, making sure that there's no allergen with other foods, using separate fryers. So technically we can't fry shellfish and chicken in the same one. And then we need to make sure we're checking labels. That's it for this one. If you have questions, please email me. I hope you were able to complete your guided reading notes. Good luck on your allergen poster, and I hope you've learned a lot.